All right, so today we are checking out the Randomx algorithm on the 7950X as well as the 7950X 3D. So Randomx is for your Monero, your ZEPHYR, your Yada coin, QRL, Taboo coin, and there's probably some other ones I missed. I apologize for that if you are watching this and I missed your coin. But the Randomx algorithm in general will get about the same hash rate as well as power consumption. So I'm going to start with some early BIOS tuning. We're starting with the 7950X here, and if you're new to CPU mining, just some basic settings to kind of lock it in, and then I'm going to see if I can get something a little more efficient. Okay, so here we are in the Gigabyte motherboard, and the first thing you are going to want to do, I have a bunch of my settings already set, but I'm going to go through everything so you guys can set them as well. So you're going to want to hit F2, and that brings you into advanced mode. Now the first thing you do want to do in your system is go into settings, go to platform power here, and AC back is usually off. Make sure you turn that on. What this does is it makes sure that every time you turn off your PSU or you get a power outage or whatever, your rig will automatically turn back on as soon as it gets power. So it disables having to use the power switch all the time. After that, you're going to want to go into your system information here and set your system date and time to your current date. Sometimes it's off by a couple years, sometimes just a month, sometimes a couple days. You know, it's various all over the place. But if you do not have this set pretty darn close to your current date, if you're using HiveOS like most of us are, you will not be able to update it. I've ran into this issue in the past, and that turned out to be the problem, was the date in the motherboard was wrong. So I couldn't update HiveOS and stuff within HiveOS itself. So make sure you do that. It definitely will make things a little smoother moving forward. So now let's look at some overclocking. So CPU control here. I'm going to go to the CPU clock ratio. As you can see, I have it set to 45. 4.5 here. This is 4.5 gigahertz. This is your top end of your base clock here, and that's pretty much all this is doing for me. So we're going to cancel out that. So I'm running this at 4.5. Next, we're going to scroll down here and we're going to enable Expo. So right now you can see I'm on Expo 1. Now this RAM does work with XMP as well as Expo. Depending on the RAM you have, this is an AMD motherboard, CPU and stuff, obviously. So Expo is the AMD equivalent to XMP, but you may only have XMP inside of your BIOS, so just use XMP1. So I'm using XMP here. This overclocks your RAM to where it should be. In this case, this is CL30 6000 megahertz. It is now set to 6000 megahertz. Once you do that, two new options should appear here: low latency support and high bandwidth support. I do find that high bandwidth gives more hash rate over the low latency, so I do enable this high bandwidth support. And then down here in your CPU vCore, you'll get your voltages. Right now I am set to 0.95 volts. Now the lower you go in the voltage, the less power and temperatures that will be produced, but you may run into stability issues. So if you're stable when you set it, keep setting it down just a little bit until it won't boot anymore or won't load the miner or something, and bring it up slightly and then kind of run it for a few days to make sure you're stable. And the reason I'm using Randomx is because it is one of the most power intensive algorithms, so it makes sense to tune on this. That way you can move to any other coin and you won't have to worry about going down. Once that is complete, simply hit F10 and then save it. Yes, good to go. So this is what I do run most of my rigs on. Base clock, drop the voltage down till it's unstable, bring it up a little bit. This does run, so this is why I'm rocking this right now. I might try to bring those voltages and stuff down later on. But let's just go look at our power and our current hash rates. All right, so our current hash rate, just do a refresh here. We can see 22.74 kilohash. And also keep in mind, guys, this cooler is only a $23 Canadian cooler, and we're sitting at 55 degrees Celsius. This thing is amazing. This cooler is awesome, especially for the price that it costs here. But we can see 22.74 kilohash coming in, and we can watch it kind of hash away. 22.9, 22.7, 22.9 on the high here. So we're seeing 22.74 kilohash now. So you can see almost 23 kilohash. And again, we're only at 55 degrees Celsius thanks to this $23 cooler. Now my current ambient temp is about 20 degrees. I don't know exactly what it is in here because I just pulled it out of the other room and it was actually only like 10 degrees in the other room where I actually have the majority of my rigs. So at the wall, we are about 175, 177 watts at this 22.7 kilohash or so. And another thing I want to point out about this cooler here, it is also dead silent. So I'm going to bring in the decibel reader here, and we're just going to have a quick look. I almost tripped over the cable here for the internet, but that's all right. So we're just going to have a look here. Coming in without me talking, the ambient temp in the air, or temperature, the sound right now. So like 52.8 to 53 decibels is all it is. You know, the ASICs in the background are kind of leaking into here. But I'm going to put this right up to the cooler here, and you guys can have an idea just how loud this cooler really is. So now I'm going to shut up. So there you can see it barely even went up. It went up like 1 decibel over the ambient that's going on in the room. So like I said, these things are dead silent and they're keeping everything cool. All right, so I have heard that shutting down the HD audio controller can save a little bit of power. So I'm going to do that right quick. HD audio controller. Now we're going to go to disable. And now you can turn off the integrated graphics, but that then turns to testing this thing as a big pain. You got to hook up a GPU and do all that stuff. I did it in the past. I didn't really notice a difference, so I'm just going to leave it on because turns it into a hassle. That's another great thing about the 7000 series is it has integrated graphics. So you don't need to plug in GPUs and do all sorts of crazy stuff to get testing done. So I'm just going to go with the HD audio controller now. We're going to save this with hitting F10, and now we're going to enable this, and let's let it boot up and see what our power consumption is now. All right, so it looks like we are now at about 22.87 kilohash. Going to refresh here. It looks like 22.9 kilohash. We did go up 1 degree. We're at 56 degrees Celsius here. Inside the miner, hash and wave, we can see 22.8, the high, 23.1, and 22.8, 22.7, and 23.1 is still the higher. So 22.8 kilohash. So we did gain a little bit of hash rate here. Now it just dropped back down again, but we're going to rock 22.8 kilohash for this. Let's take a look and see if we lost any power or not. Ambient temp is up to 21.5, as you can see there. Let's take a look at our power now. We're still at 175, 177 watts. So we're not seeing any less power happen at the wall, removing that HD audio controller. All right, so now we're going to try something else by putting this into eco mode, which actually was a big thing for the 7950 X3D. Again, I didn't fully tweak that out yet, but this setting did a pretty decent boost in efficiencies. And I'd like to thank Bitcoin Andy for pointing this out for me. So if you go into your settings here, then go to AMD CBS, and then scroll down until you come up to SMU, you will see here your eco mode, which is right here, currently disabled. So I'm actually going to enable this right here, and now let's see what things kind of look like. Hit F10, save, let it reboot, and we'll check our hash rate and power consumption. All right, so in eco mode, it doesn't look like it really did anything in terms of hash rate. We're sitting around that 22.83, 22.78, and so on. Here we can see again another peak to 23.2 kilohash, but we're sitting mostly around that 22.8. So hash rate not affected by eco mode. It could also be due to the fact that I still have my core locked, as well as, you know, I have the boost on in the RAM, and then I got my voltages set to 0.95. But let's take a look and see if anything happened at the wall for the power. All right, so looking at the wall for power here, it looks like the same thing. So eco mode didn't do anything, most likely because I still had the clocks and voltages set manually. So it's probably bypassing that whole eco mode thing altogether. All right, so now I'm going to try something different here. So I'm going to go into settings here. We're going to go to AMD overclocking. I'm going to accept this. We're going to scroll on down to wherever it is here, Precision Boost Overdrive. We're going to enable this to advanced mode. So we're going into the advanced setting here, and we're going to adjust our curve optimizer. I'm going to start at 20 here. So we're going to go all cores. Negative, which means it goes down in voltage. Positive would be giving it more voltage. So I'm going to go down in 20. So I'm going to save this. We're going to see if this thing even fires up or not. And then if this is kind of stable, I'm going to try to drop it maybe to 30 and then to 40. But right now, we're going an all-core negative curve optimizer of -20. So I'm going to save this and see if we explode. All right, so I went back into the BIOS here because it wasn't doing anything. So I set the clock speed back to auto and the voltage for the CPU back to auto and ran that -20 on the curve there. And we are losing a bit of hash rate at 20.55. We can come into the miner here. We can see 20.4. The peak was 20.6. So we lost a couple kilohash here, but how much power are we using now? All right, guys, so coming in to look at the power at the wall, we are now, so we're down to 142 watts. So that's actually a pretty decent drop compared to 177. So that's not too bad here. 142. All right, guys, so that was an eco mode. I went in and seen it was on, so I removed it. Now we can see that we are at 95 degrees Celsius, 24.8 kilohash. It was at 25 kilohash here, 25.1. But yeah, so we are definitely getting very hot right now. And we are about 324 watts at the wall. So that is a lot. So if you do that, make sure you are in eco mode. All right, so I did put this, I shut off PBO. I put it back to the 9.5 gigahertz and I dropped the voltage to 0.93. So I'm going to let it sit here. I'm probably done testing this one for now, see if it's stable. And then I'll decide if I want to drop the voltages some more or not. But let's just take a quick look at the power here based on 0.93 volts, and we are down to about, it's bouncing between 168 to 171 watts. So we are about 5 or 6 watts less than that 177 there, as we can see. So see, now that's all complete. Let's jump into the 7950 X3D and see what it's looking like. Okay, so now let's start with the 7950X 3D. So basic things here. First off, you cannot adjust your CPU core clocks or voltages when it comes to the X3D chip. So all you're going to do is exactly what we did last time. These are exact same build, same motherboards, same power supply, same RAM, same everything. So I'm going to enable that Expo 1. I'm going to then enable the high bandwidth support. And that is it, nothing else. So I'm going to run this at stock with just the XMP profile enabled, and then we'll kind of see what the numbers look like and then see what kind of tweaking we can do from there. So I'm just going to hit F10 and let's see what happens here. All right, guys, so here we are with just basic stock settings, 23.48 kilohash. We're rocking 74 degrees here. Let's take a look at what that power is looking like. So we are about 206, 207 watts just rocking stock. All right, so obviously that's not how you want to run these. But, you know, these things are very easy to set up. You only really have to do one thing, and they turn into a pretty good CPU miner. So we're going to go into settings here. We're going to go again to this AMD CBS, and we're going to scroll down to SMU. If you remember what we did last time, this is enabling eco mode. So I'm going to enable eco mode, and that is it. So I'm going to hit F10. We're going to save that and see what our numbers are looking like. Okay, so we are about 20.71 kilohash. You can do some refreshes here. We got 20.66, and we are only about 50 degrees on the CPU. Let's take a look at some hash stats here. 20.7, our high was 20.7, so 20.7, I guess, are some numbers that we're going to roll with here. Let's do another refresh, see if anything changed. 20.64. So 20.7 kilohash is what it's looking like. Let's see what our power is currently looking like. And just so we know, our ambient temp is now 21.1 degrees Celsius, and we are rocking 50 degrees on the 7950 X3D with only a $23 cooler Canadian. So that's like next to free. They're probably giving it away in the United States. But let's take a look at our power here. We are rocking, let's see if we can kind of focus better here. So 141 watts. That's actually not too bad. All we did was enable eco mode, and we got a pretty damn CPU miner. Very fast and easy to get going. So 141 watts here. 20.7 kilohash. All right, so I went back into the BIOS and I added that -20, the negative there on the curve optimizer. If you don't know what I'm talking about, rewind the video. We went through all these settings on the 7950X. So I added that -20, that negative curve optimizer, and we actually gained some hash rate to 21.26 kilohash. Gonna do a refresh, 21.25 here, just to take a look at some hash rates. 21.2, 21.3, 21.2, 21.3. Let's see if our power changed at all at the wall. All right, coming in, we're a little more hash rate here, and we're about the same power. So we didn't lose or gain any power at all, but we did gain like an extra kilohash worth of hash rate. So I'm going to drop that curve optimizer a little bit more, and let's see if this fires up. All right, so -40 curve did not want to boot up. It'd get to Hive OS and then it just crashed. So it wasn't getting the juice that it needed, just like if you didn't have enough voltage to run the miner or the OS. So that's kind of what we were running into there. So I'm on -30 now. It booted up, and we can see we're at 21.76 kilohash, about 51 degrees. Let's take a look at some hashes here. 21.7, the max is 21.8. So we did gain a little bit more again. So I'm going to have to rock 21.7 kilohash here for these final numbers. Let's take a look at what our power is looking like at the wall. Another ambient check, 21.4 degrees Celsius, and we're still about 50 C on this thing. So again, $23 coolers are looking awesome. Anyway, how much power are we using? We are up a bit more power now at 143 watts. All right, guys, so here's some final numbers for the 7950X versus the 7950X3D on the Randomx algorithm. Also, keep in mind these are going to be a little bit lower, which I'm going to test out right after this because I am running both of them on the same power supply. I'm going to put them on there, and as we put a little more load on the power supply, we should see lower power between them all because we're hitting that higher efficiency range of the PSU itself. It's always best to try to run around 50%. I'm not exactly at that, but we'll see if it actually makes sense because we're going to add up the two settings I'm using right now and see what the wall power does look like. But first, here we can see at the 4.5 and 0.95 volts here, what I normally run, we're about 22.74 kilohash. That is 128.474 hash to watt ratio. Now, the best setting on the 7950X was that -20 PBO curve with eco on. That was 20.56 kilohash, 142 watts only. That was 144.78 hash to watt. Now let's just compare that to the X3D's best efficient setting, the -30 PBO. Again, I have to let this run for a few days to a week to see if it's even stable on Randomx here, but we'll get an idea as time goes by. But this was 21.76 kilohash at 143 watts is 152.167 hashes per watt of power used. That is extremely efficient here. Just for kind of a comparison versus say a 3900X, they're rocking about 103.84 kilohash. You know, they're using about 130 watts at 13,500 hashes. Again, various tweaking and RAM will give you different numbers, but we can see we are way more efficient than the 3900Xs. Both CPUs are great, but I do think that the 7950X3D is a lot easier to tweak. It's just a couple settings. You turn on eco mode, then you turn on your curve optimizer to -20, -30 here, and you're done. That is it. Obviously set your RAM stuff for, you know, XMP1 and stuff like that, but it's very fast and easy to tweak the X3D. On top of it, also has all that extra 3D V cache, so you should be able to use the full CPU on a coin like Haven, which requires 4 megabytes of L3 per thread being used, where the 7950X, you're only going to be using half the CPU. But we don't really mind that coin too often, but if it ever becomes a thing or another algorithm emerges, that L3 could come in handy. It is also the more expensive CPU. But here we can see it does look like the X3D on Randomx is the more efficient CPU. It's not by a huge amount, so obviously it comes down to price and stuff. I love both of these CPUs due to the future proofing, the AVX512 architecture, the instructions for the CPU. It's the next gen level stuff. So both of these CPUs are awesome. Now let's take a look. I'm going to link these together and see what the power looks like at the wall with both of them on the same PSU. So right now I am running it back to this setting right here. So we should be at about 170 watts, which we saw in our test. And I am still on this one, so 143. I just added them together. So based on these numbers, we should be at about 313 watts. Let's see if we are using any less power. All right, so they are both running mining XMR right now. 313 watts is the number we got to beat. Do you guys think that it is going to be lower, higher, or about the same where it should be? So 3, 2, 1, comment below right now. Also, hit the subscribe button while you're at it. So let's take a look here at the power. We are now at, wow, we're at 308 watts. So because we are closer to the peak efficiency of the power supply, we did lose some power there, so that's awesome, just as I was expected to be. That's why I do this. So this is actually a 750 watt power supply. You know, I think around a 600 watt power supply would be better, because as you can see, we're at 307 watts, so we should drop the power a little bit more based on the power supply that you do use. So that's one thing, guys. So there we go, guys. Randomx 7950X versus the 7950X3D. Let me know your thoughts and opinions, and I'm sure there's a lot more other settings that you can do, manual RAM tweaking and so on. So we could probably get both of these a little more efficient, but right now this looks optimal, and the X3D is leading in efficiency, not by a huge amount, but it is the winner for Randomx. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Rabid out.